I would like to now welcome Crystal up, and she is going to share before Christopher comes. Curtis, sorry.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Crystal Christopher. First time saying that in public speaking. And can I just get a quick show of hands? Does anybody know this family up here? Just, do you know who we are? Just quickly give me an idea how many of you know us. Okay, Curtis is actually going to go much more into our story, but we are a family who has a ministry in the space of social media. And our ministry is called, it's the Run to the Hard podcast. It is a podcast. There is a really strange bug flying around me. I thought it was a bee, so, but it is a podcast on grief, and we dive into the raw spaces of deep grief, not just the loss of a spouse, which is Curtis and I's story, but the loss of a job, the loss of your health, the loss of so many things. We dive into that because there is grief when you lose your health. There's grief when you lose your job. There's grief when you lose your home, and we know that. And we are actually starting to really reach a lot of people and give them the hope and the promise of Jesus, that even when you are brought to your knees in pain and tears are on your face, that there is still hope in our Savior. And so that is the space we're reaching right now. But specifically, I don't know if our verse is up there right now. I wanted to share, it's James 1:27. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. As a church, and we are the church, if you are a believer, you are the church. We are to come to support the widows and the orphans and the fatherless. And it is a space when I became a widow and my children became fatherless that I recognized the church was falling short, and that we were not meeting the needs. And this is a space where Curtis and I are now pouring into meeting the needs, and we're reaching people that don't know Jesus. We need supported. We are going to be at the back at the end of us speaking. We're selling T-shirts. We would love for you to buy a T-shirt. The T-shirts, 100% goes back to the ministry. Actually, 100% of every gift goes straight back to the ministry. And it just is going to keep us on the air. So if you have not heard the podcast, search it. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple. It's everywhere you get podcasts. It is on YouTube. So it's a video version on YouTube. And so anywhere that you can. But with that, let me introduce my super hot husband. I didn't think you could say sexy in church, so I thought. He's kind of a big deal. He has done almost everything. He has been a teacher, a coach. He's been the vice president of a university. He has dived into the world of real estate and really built his community in the city of Circleville, Ohio. But God has then now since called him, and he is a speaker and a podcaster. So with that, would you guys please welcome Curtis Christopher.
Thanks, babe. You're nuts. You're nuts. Oh, my goodness. The funny thing is when she was given a link to the podcast, I'll tell more about the story here in a minute, she didn't know there was a YouTube version, so she'd never seen me before. So I was distraught to think that this lady had never seen what I even looked like before. And I'm like, what in the world? Why would you listen to a podcast and not know who you're talking to? But anyways, that's for later on in the story. Thanks for having us, Shane and Jennifer. Thank you. Seriously, we're humbled that you asked us to come. Shane called and said, we need you to come speak to us. And I told Shane, I said, Shane, we said yes to the Lord a long time ago, and we're literally going where he's leading. And we want to continue to say yes to Jesus and follow wherever he's leading. This is not the ministry that I thought I would be doing at this point in my life. I didn't think I'd be on a podcast talking about grief and death and the hardships of life. I didn't think that I would have 9 children at 56 years old. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's just not possible. And so, but thank you guys. And, we attended church together in Circleville, and we knew each other, but we didn't know each other. And I want to tell you what, our close friend Wendell Brown, your district superintendent, he and I talk on a regular. He's one of my mentors. He has walked a hard road with me over the years. And I'm telling you, over the last year, he has brought you up more times. And he's so proud of you, and we're proud of you and proud of the work that you're doing here. And you folks are blessed. These are good people. And so thank you for inviting us. We appreciate that. Let's pray. I need some prayer this morning. Lord, thank you for a good day. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for the work that you're doing. But Lord, we ask right now that you would take over this conversation. Lord, we ask that everything we do would point people to you. We ask these things in your name. Amen. I did bring notes. We've all been sick. We've had sickness go through our whole home, so my brain is foggy. It has a little bit of NyQuil in it still. And so we podcasted last week, and we were both so sick, but we hadn't been on the podcast for several weeks, and we're like, we got to do it. We got to give everybody an update, tell them that we're married. And I'm telling you, if you listen to it, we laughed so hard. I think we were both under NyQuil during it. It's a little bit funny because I look back at it now, I'm like, oh boy, was that a good idea? I'm going to jump right in. 1975, I'm 6 years old, and my mom takes my little sister and I, she's 3, I'm 6, and she puts us in a little red VW Volkswagen. That's what she loved. She loved those since she was in college. And she drove us away from a really bad situation. My mom was a Christian, but she'd married a guy that was a little bit rough, but he ended up going to Vietnam. And when my dad came home from Vietnam, he was a mess. The whole gamut, drugs, alcohol, women, the whole thing. And my mom knew that she wanted to raise us in the church. She knew that she wanted to be a praying mother. She knew that she wanted a better life for us. And so she made the decision to not know what the future held, not know what life was going to look like, but she loaded the 2 kids of hers into a little vehicle and drove off with nearly the shirts on our back. That's a true story. And put her entire faith in God that he would help her find a place, a home, a job, everything to help care for us. And we didn't have a lot of money. We were pretty poor growing up, but God just continually provided over and over and over. And I'm setting the standard this morning because there's a lot of times in life where there is a time to start over. There is a time to put your house in order. And there's some things that have to happen when that happens in your life. The neat thing is that even in a hard place, my mom had learned how to do hard things. She was a farm girl growing up, so she wasn't afraid of hard work. She knew this was going to be a hard thing. But her faith in Jesus, her faith in God, her understanding of what it was going to take to help raise these kids, she couldn't do on her own. She knew she was going to have to get into a good church. She knew that. She knew it was going to take other men. My mom never remarried. She's 81 years old today, never remarried. She raised us as a single mom. And she depended on the church, depended on men in the church to step up and help. And I was a rowdy kid. I'm just going to tell you that right off the bat. To help a kid like me grow up and know how to use his hands, know how to work hard, know about athletics, all those things. She trusted God to help make that happen. And it paid off. As a young person, I gave my heart to Jesus because of a church service. As a young teenager, I was involved in a strong youth group because of my mom's willingness to make sure I was in church. I went on to Olivet Nazarene University. I went to a Christian college. As a junior, though, I remember waking up saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. I'm about 20 years old. I needed money, too, so I took a semester off and stayed home and worked real hard. But it was during that semester off that I really began to seek God. God, what do you want to do in my life? What do you want me to do? What's my purpose in life? And I had a face-down experience. I remember literally laying on my face in my bedroom in my mom's home. I was a junior in college. saying, God, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life, but whatever it is, I'm yours. And, when you're a college kid, you don't have a lot. I remember literally naming every single possession that I ever had my whole life in that moment. God, I give you my one pair of slacks that I own, the only pair of dress pants I have. God, I give you my white shirt. It's the only dress shirt I have, my single tie. Give you my 3 pair of jeans. The only thing I did have was that a 1981 Camaro with T-tops. That was a big deal. I said, God, it's yours. Yeah, I worked so hard to get that car. But I said, God, it's yours. It's all yours. And I remember for the first time in my life, I had a chance to put my house in order. Does that make sense? I had a chance to say, God, it's all yours. I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing and wherever I'm going, you're leading the way. And that was a big deal in my life. I went on. Lord literally guided my steps over the next few years. I graduated from college, came back, and I taught in the little Christian school that I grew up in. And I was a math teacher. I was a computer teacher. I coached high school basketball, and great few years. And this was in Sturgis, Michigan. You can forgive me later, but I am a Michigan guy, and I've been abused for years and years living in Ohio. It's all right. I'm just used to it. But I remember we worked there for about 5 years, got married, bought my first home. After about 5 years, God began to stir my heart. He began to stir my heart, and he said, it's time to go. You needed this place to begin to grow up. You needed this place to begin to work on the gifts and skills that I've given you. You needed this place, but now it's time to move on. And I was scared. I was a hometown kid. I married a hometown girl, and for the first time, we were thinking about stepping out, right, Shane? Stepping out, moving to a place that we didn't know anybody. I had a friend of a friend had introduced me to Circleville Bible College in Circleville, Ohio, and I began praying and asking God, is this the place that you want to send us? And I went home on a Wednesday afternoon. I'd actually come and interview for a job, but I went home on a Wednesday afternoon and on a Wednesday morning. Before work, I'd gotten up, I went to the hardware store, and I bought a for sale by owner sign. True story. I said, God, if this is where you want us to go, I'm going to test you. And this was the one time that I really tested God. I went back to the house, stuck it in the front yard, went to work. And wouldn't you know, by 7 p.m. that night, it's a true story, guys, 7 p.m. that night, I'm sitting at my kitchen table with a gentleman who's writing me a full contract on this little home that we'd fixed up. Because in order to go to Circleville, I had done the math. I wrote the spreadsheet out. This is what the house would be to pay it off. This is what the car would be to pay it off. This would be the leftover school bills that I had to pay off. And so I wrote what I needed to sell the house for to the penny of everything that we were going to need to pay off. By 7 p.m. that night, the house was sold and all bills were paid. True story. I was like, okay, God, I guess we're supposed to leave, right? A few weeks later, we moved to Circleville, Ohio, of all places. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody here. But we began to start this new life. And I tell that story for 2 reasons. One, at 20, God began to help me understand what it means to put my house in order. At 27, I really had to put my house in order because God wanted to do something bigger, and he was showing me that there's a process, there's a formula God expects all of us to do, and I think we need to do it on a regular basis. The first thing he says is, trust me, but he always makes us take the first step anytime there's a major decision to be made. God might be impressing on you something, maybe a new ministry, maybe a move, maybe a job, whatever it is. But Shane, Jennifer, what does he expect us to do? We have to step out. He doesn't show us the finances. He doesn't show us the home. He doesn't show us all the things that we're like so nervous about of what we need to raise our families. He's like, no. I need you to step out first. What he asked the disciples to do, right? He said, hey, leave mom and dad. Hey, leave your job. Hey, leave fishing, but come follow me. And I'll never forget when I went up and took that sign and put it in the yard, it was the first step. And then like dominoes, God just started meeting all the needs. You see, my mom had learned that. She had learned that process, that when you step out in faith, the provisions always happen. They just do. I can't tell you how and why. I can tell you on year after year after year, I would sit down and write a budget, and say to myself, there's no way that we're going to be able to cover all these things. But every year, the budget was made. Every year, God provided. He did it for my mom. And that was the testimony. That was the mother that I got to grow up under, watching her step out in faith over and over and over and over again, and then watching God provide. That was 1997 that I showed up at Circleville, Ohio. Philippians 4, and my God will supply every need of yours according to his riches and glory. Every need. But he requires us to step out. You know, we had a great run in Circleville. Shane and I come from a great church. We had a great pastor. And while I was working at the college became Ohio Christian University. It also became the fastest growing Christian college in the nation for about 7-8 years. Not 6, 7. 7 or 8. Sorry. Junior high joke. And at the same time, I got to be a part of a great church that was, honestly, we were the fastest growing Nazarene church in the country for several years. And so all these great things are happening, and I'm getting to be a part of some tremendous ministries, and it was a wonderful time. But little did people know that even though ministry looked good, even though our family looked good, at this point I had a son and a daughter, people didn't know that my home life was not good. They didn't know that my marriage had been falling apart. And I had hid it. I had covered it up. I'd made sure that nobody knew. And I remember literally having to go to my pastor, Wendell Brown at the time, and saying, I got to tell you some stuff. It's not good. And I'll never forget, he was mad at me. He was like, what are you talking about? Like, everybody thinks like you guys are the great Christian family in my church. Like, what are you talking about? I said, it's all a fraud. I said, it's not good, Wendell. And we'd gone through a hard public divorce. And that's hard. You know, do you know that I try to leave this part of my story out everywhere I go? Every single time I'm like, I don't want to tell this part of the story. Every time. And every time God says, nope, it's the story. It's what people need to hear. They need to know that these things happen even in the church. And we know they do. We just don't want to talk about it. And without any details, guys, you know, I was betrayed and went through a hard divorce, stepped down from the board at the church. I stepped down from my job at the college. I just felt so humiliated that I had to wear this badge of divorce, right? And for those of you who have been through it, it is a death. Going through a divorce is a death of its own. It's tragic. It's hard. And I had to put my house in order again. I'm 45 years old, and I stepped down from my job at the college, and God says, sell your home, sell everything, and go start a business from scratch. Okay, God. All right. I've done it before. I was a lot younger, 27 and 45. There's a big difference. And guys, I'm telling you, this really happened. I sold the house that we built. I paid everything off, had $1,500 in my pocket. That's it. And went and started a real estate company from scratch with no money. And you're saying, how's that even possible? Ask him. I wish I had 3 hours to tell you a dozen stories of how God, people from Circleville know me as the real estate guy. You know, he bought all these buildings and did a lot of stuff. And I want to share this everywhere I go, that people see that, but most people have no idea that God asked me to do that, and I had no money. Zero. And you're like, how is that possible? I'm telling you, deal after deal after deal. In 7 years, we became the second largest real estate company in Pickaway County. 7 years. That's nuts. And you're saying, I don't understand why God would pull you out of ministry and pull you into something like that. I'll get to that point. Because when God's in charge, it's our job to simply follow. It's not our job to question. It's just follow. But here I am, divorced. I'm single. Business is great. I've hired a staff. These are some people I dearly loved, and we had worked so hard to build this thing. But I'm divorced. I'm lonely, right? I'm about 50 years old now. My kids are, one's married, one's about to get married. And I'm not going to lie, I was tempted. I was like, man, I'm lonely, God. Is there anybody out there for me? you know? And every time I'd have that thought, I would get scared and say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to date. I never tried a dating app. I'm just telling you that. I never did that. Didn't go date anybody. I wrote a list one time, though. I actually wrote a few names down and was like, maybe I could take somebody to coffee. And then I was like, no, I can't do that, and threw it away. That really happened. I was like, no, because then your brain tells you, oh, man, but, she's related to so-and-so, and she's related to so-and-so. If that doesn't work out, like, they're going to think badly. Like, your brain goes crazy over that stuff. I said, God, I'm 50 years old now. I said, God, if you've got somebody for me, you're literally going to have to drop them in my lap because I don't want to mess this up. And he did. He actually did. And I wish I had. And by the way, there's a podcast. These stories are on it. If you want to hear how God miraculously sends me Michael, how he did it is so supernatural. But I meet this lady. I take her on our first coffee date. It's December 26th, day after Christmas, 2019. Neither one of us had kids that day. Her kids were with their father. My kids had come earlier, and here we are on Christmas Day with no kids, and I'm like, I wonder if she wants to go to coffee. So I call her, and we go to coffee the very next day, and God begins to do a work. She'd been through a really hard, messy public divorce. I had been through one. We had some messes to work out, but God began to bring us together, and we began to vet each other. We began to pray over each other every single night. We began to ask, is this really what you want, God? Is this really what you want? And some of my friends were like, dude, she's got 5 kids. So we did. My kids are grown out of the house, and one of my friends was like, you're a bachelor. You got a good business. You got a good life. Like, what are you doing? They're great kids. I mean, they're great guys. They're great kids. And just began to really feel that God was bringing us together. And we get engaged in May of 2020. We get married August 15th of 2020, right in the middle of COVID. Like, literally right in the middle of COVID. And this is a true story. I've got this old building uptown, and it's really cool, but it's old and it's messy, and she walks in that place, and she's like, I want to get married here. And, me, the guy, I'm like, oh, man, are you serious? This is going to be a lot of work. And so after we got engaged in May, we decided to get married in June. And I gave her 6 weeks. I was like, let's get married August 15th. It was the end of June. So in 6 weeks, we fix up that old building just enough to get married in it. We have to remodel my basement because we got to build a bedroom. That's funny, Edward. We're doing it again. we have to get an extra room in my basement for the kids. We have to get her house ready to sell and on the market. In 6 weeks, we pull all this off. We get married August 15th. And it's good, guys. It's hard. It's messy. We have messes. I'm not going to sugarcoat this and tell you that we don't have stuff we have to work through. Does that make sense? But God continually helps us to work through the messes that we kind of bring together. And we form this marriage. We form this marriage, and I've got a house full of kids and my adult kids. I mean, we really are cooking with gas. Everything just seems to be working out. We're working hard. We make it to our 2nd year anniversary. And I'll never forget, my mom actually called me. She said, Curtis, you have worked this woman to the bone. Like, she deserves a really good anniversary. And I was like, you're right, Mom. And so she said, you need to spoil her. You guys have worked so hard and gone through so much. And so I book the Grand Hotel at Mackinac Island for our 2nd anniversary. And we go, and guys, it was a blast. We felt like, I wish I could put this in a visual. The two of us felt like we'd been through so much, and God had helped us so much that we felt like we were on a launch pad. We were this rocket on a launch pad, and God was getting ready to light the fuse. We started getting re-involved in our church. She started working with the children's ministry. We were going to homeschool a couple of the kids that year. Like, all the pieces just seemed like they were coming together, and we felt like we were getting ready for the rest of our life. In fact, she would say this to me all the time. She'd say, we may never get a 25 or 30-year anniversary. She said, so let's just pack as much of life into the years we have as we can. That was our plan. That was our goal. We're at Mackinac, and on 2 or 3 different occasions, she bends over and she can't breathe. She's like, man, I must be really out of shape because I can't catch my breath. And that wasn't like her. She was in shape. She ate well. I mean, I eat terrible. She eats well. And the kids want to eat terrible, but she won't let them. But true story. I said, hey, I said, honey, when we get home, let's get you checked out because this isn't normal. I said, this isn't normal. We go home. She goes to the doctor. They can't find anything. In fact, they say, maybe you just had a virus. Maybe something was in your lungs, and we don't really know what's going on. But just check back in a couple weeks. We never made it back to a checkup because over the next couple weeks, it just kept getting a little bit worse. And then 2 weeks went by. We ended up in the ER. She couldn't breathe all night. She was miserable. She actually began to swell up. And we're like, what is going on? And doctor comes out and says, your 43-year-old wife with 5 kids is in heart failure. We're like, what? How is that even possible? I mean, we literally couldn't believe our ears. We didn't know what to even think. And he said, but we don't know what's causing it. We think she has a good heart, but we don't know what's causing it. And over the next few days, blood work, tests, all kinds of things we go through. And then we get this dreaded phone call where the doctor calls us and says, hey, we finally figured out what it is. Your wife, she has bone marrow cancer. She has amyloidosis, which is it's a rogue protein that the cancer is actually producing, and it's attaching itself to her organs, and it's shutting them down. And my wife, at 43 years of age, from the day that we get that news to the day she died was just 4 weeks. Just 4 weeks. 5 kids. And we just celebrated a 2nd anniversary after literally warring through all the hardships and things that we've been through. And we're like, God, He's getting ready to do something big. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't understand, God. None of this makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense. I buried my wife, and then 4 of the 5 kids got in a vehicle after the funeral and drove away, and I didn't ever think I'd see him again. It was almost like 2 funerals. I'm going to circle back to the story about my wife, but I want to tell you a parallel story that was going on at the same time for somebody that I knew nothing about. I didn't know her. I didn't even know she existed. Crystal goes to nursing school right out of high school or right out of college. She goes from high school into college, goes to nursing school, finishes nursing school, falls in love with an Army guy, gets married. And it was after 9/11. And Crystal, wrong one, wait on that slide. That's the next guy. Our life's weird, guys. It just is. We've learned to embrace it, because if you don't, you just want to crawl into a ball and hide. Crystal marries an Army guy, and he gets deployed 4 years in a row. The rules all changed on President Bush. When we went to Iraq, he took all the rules away and just said, we're going to send them as many times as we need. And so Crystal gets married, and her husband comes back from Iraq, a different guy. I mean, different guy. And basically walks away, abandons her, and empties the bank account, literally abandons her, never to be seen again. And here this poor lady who's working, they just bought a house. They too thought, our future's going to be great. You're out of the Army. We're going to buy a house. We're going to start a family. We're going to do all these things. And then he's gone. And so she has a choice to make. She too now is having to put her house in order. And in her situation, hey, Paul, you're way ahead. We're not even into these yet. Just back up to the run to the hard. It'll make sense here in a minute. There you go. Just stay there for a minute. But Crystal does something that we all hope that we would do, is she leans hard into God. She's going to do this hard thing, but she's not going to do it without her relationship with Christ. And she leans hard into God and learns of a love that she never experienced before, a love of a Savior who loves her in a way that she's never been loved before, and begins to understand what love is, begins to understand what it's going to take. She has no children. She's by herself. She doubles down at work, takes extra shifts because now she's got to catch up all the bills and pay things off, but she's by herself. And she told me this story one time, and it's a crazy story, but she's literally wheeling an older gentleman into heart surgery, and he looks up at her and says, "Ma'am, are you single?" And she's like, "Yes, who wants to know?" He's like, "Oh, it's not for me, but my doctor is this wonderful man, and he just needs a great woman, and you just seem like a really great woman." And she's like, "Oh boy." You know, nurses and doctors, you hear the stories, and she's like, nurses, we don't date doctors. We stay away from them. But once you know it, she goes on a blind date with a patient that she met going into surgery's doctor. And now you can go to the next slide. And Crystal meets Dr. Brandon Berman. Okay? But she doesn't do this until there's been a mighty work of God in her life. She doesn't do this until she understands what love really is, what love looks like. And Brandon loves her. They are now 30 and 40. He was a little bit older than her. And they're like, we need to have kids because we want to have a family. This is our goal and dream in life. And so she gets pregnant immediately with Olivia. And 3 months after Olivia is born, Madison, she gets pregnant with Madison. Those two are a year apart, and their birthdays are in August. They're literally a year apart. And so, Crystal and Brandon get married. They have a family quickly. They're on top of the world. Guys, this is what she'd always dreamed of. And right after she delivers Madison, she gets really sick. They don't know why. And come to find out, Crystal's a lupus patient. Had no idea she had it and got deathly sick, almost lost her. She's got 2 young girls, literally babies. And she gets sick with lupus and nearly dies. She recovers. She becomes the best lupus patient ever. She literally told her doctor, she changed her whole lifestyle, eating habits, everything. And then COVID comes, 2020. COVID comes. Lupus, being an immune system disease, and then COVID hits, right? You guys do the math. Like it's not a good scenario. COVID nearly killed her. Liver failure. Her liver shut down. They gave her 2 weeks to live. So imagine this, young family. They feel like God's blessing them, and everything's coming together, and her health fails. And she's like, God, what in the world is going on? All of her family thought they would lose her first. True story. She's a strong woman. Believe me, I know. She keeps all of us in line. She does. She survives it. Her liver, the doctor gave her 2 weeks to live. And you know what he did? He came to her and said, I don't know what to do with you. Your body is literally killing your liver, and I don't know how to stop it. And you know the medicine they give you when you're doing a heart transplant or a liver transplant? It's the medicine that makes your body not reject the organ. He was like, let's try it, 50-50 chance, let's see if it works. That's all he could do. He didn't know what else to do. He gave it to her, and it worked. Her body quit rejecting her liver, and she survived. And here she is. She's getting healthy. It took her a while. She was in a wheelchair. She told her family one time, after liver failure and almost dying from COVID, she's in a wheelchair getting pushed around. She tells her family, I'm gonna run a 5K soon. They're like, what? You're gonna run a 5K? She did. She got on that treadmill. She worked herself back into shape, and she survived that. It was that's 2020, 2021, 2022. Her and her husband get a weekend away, Brandon, and Brandon gets really, really sick. Brandon gets really, really sick. She's like, "What's wrong with you? Did you eat something bad?" You know, because when you're on vacation, what do? You eat all kinds of garbage, the stuff you don't normally eat. And Brandon gets home, gets some blood work done at the hospital, and doctor calls him in and says, "Brandon, you have blood cancer." They've just survived 3 traumatic events in a row, and Dr. Berman gets blood cancer in 2022. The reason I'm giving you this parallel story is because when Michael and I and the kids were in the hospital, we were at the James Cancer Clinic, and we were there for about 2 weeks. While we were there, and Michael passed away in the hospital, there's a young family down the hall at the James Cancer Clinic starting bone marrow transplant procedures. It's the Berman family. That's nuts. So they're there. They live in the hospital for nearly 5 months as he gets a bone marrow transplant. He survives it. He's home for 3 weeks, and he's starting to get strong. Things are starting to go well. His doctor calls and says, "Hey, blood work's not good. You need to come back in." Brandon and Crystal go back into the hospital, in which the doctor said, "Brandon, the cancer's back, and it's bad. It's back bad." Dr. Brandon Berman died 3 days later. He goes from finding the love of his life, getting married, having 2 wonderful children. Crystal gets sick, goes through 2 major procedures, and dies the next year. And then you've got Crystal, single mom again, single again, raising 2 kids on her own. I'm going to tell you about a parallel that you can't make this stuff up. So Michael dies at the James Cancer Hospital October 9th of 22. Brandon Berman, and she's in the James, the 11th floor, room 1150. Brandon Berman dies 6 months later on April 20th, the James Cancer Hospital, the 11th floor, and to the best of our knowledge, room 1150. God was already crossing our paths, and we didn't know each other. God was weaving a story together for 2 people who didn't know anything about each other. And the more we dug in and the more we talked about our stories together, we were floored at how similar. She told me, she said, our stories are pretty similar, but we had no idea just how similar they were. And so so Brandon dies in April of 23. April of 24, one of my former students from the college comes to me and said, "Hey, Coach, we've read your stuff. We've heard your story. We've heard how Michael left such an amazing testimony to you, to the family, to the hospital. We want to help you tell your story. We want to start a podcast." And guys, I'll be honest with you, I was in no place to want to do a podcast. I was still mourning my wife, and I thought it was a dumb idea. I told Chris, I said, "Chris, I don't want to do that. That's hard." He's like, "Coach, this is how we're going to help you tell Michael's story and get her testimony out there. This is how we're going to reach people for Jesus, because I believe your story is bigger than you think." I did a couple episodes. I hated them. They were awful. I didn't like to hear myself talk. I cried all the time. We would do an episode, and I'd go to bed for the rest of the day. It was just hard stuff. It's like reliving this thing over and over and over. You know, Crystal and I both held our spouses when they took their last breath. That's a memory that, you don't want to have every day, but it's also a memory you don't ever want to lose. And so to have to relive that over and over and over and over, it was hard. But after a few episodes, people began to message us. People began to say, "Man, you're helping us. Thank you for doing this." Some friends of mine, because we're two dudes talking. We're talking about hard stuff, which, by the way, Chris did some research. He calls me, he said, nobody's doing this. He said, Curtis, no guys are doing podcasts on grief. He said, I've looked at Christianity Today. I've looked at a bunch of the different church organizations out there, and nobody's doing this. They're doing these small little snippets here and there. They'll have one podcast, but he said especially men. Men are not talking about this stuff. He said there's a niche. He said you'll be shocked to find out what God's going to do with this. And so I kept doing it. We got to about episode 7, and I get this message from this lady, and she says, thank you for what you're doing. She said, it's helping me. She said, our stories are similar. What you're doing has to be so hard. And I'm like, you have no idea. This is hard stuff. It was Crystal. Her brother sends her a link to the podcast, just sends her a link. And she starts listening to it. And she begins to realize that our stories overlap. And she's like, holy cow, I got to at least tell this guy or thank him for what he's doing. And you have to understand, I'm a single guy again, and who are the touchy-feely people in this world? It's not the guys. It's the women. And I was like, oh, man, some chick's messaging me. What do I do with this? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, tell me your story someday. I mean, it was one of those. It was a little bit, because it's awkward. It's awkward. And not that anybody means anything. It's awkward as a guy again, single guy. And she's just as shocked that she sent the first message. She was even more shocked that I messaged back. And come to find out, we had a lot of things in common. She began to tell me her story. And honestly, I was like, holy cow, I want to tell your story on the podcast. And she was the first guest that we ever had on the podcast. And that's all I wanted. I called her one day and I said, hey, I want to hear your story, but I'm not interested in you. I said it because I wanted to make sure that we knew that. She's like, she actually said, I'm so glad you said that because I'm not interested in you either. This is a real conversation. And I'm like, great, we can be grieving buddies. She's like, that sounds great. And so from the very first couple sentences out of our mouth, we set the ground rules. Like, we're going to be grieving buddies. We're going to tell our stories to each other. And we laughed and we cried. We cried a lot. I mean, it felt good to connect to somebody at this depth of a level because we had been through so much, right? But we were not interested. I just want to make sure you all know that. And I invited her on the podcast. And then Chris sets a time up to interview her for the podcast. And then I'm telling you, God just did something. He swept over the two of us. I mean, in a 24-hour period of time, I can't remember who called who, but I remember she said, did you feel what just happened? And I was like, yeah, what happened to you? Because neither one of us wanted to, tell each other what we were feeling. And she's like, I felt a wave hit me like I've never felt before. And I was like, that's what I felt. And God just swept over the two of us. It was a love wave. And it was so powerful that neither one of us, and the reason God did it was because we were so against this idea. We had married well, and our spouses were amazing, and we had both put them on a pedestal like there's nobody that could ever match what we had. Does that make sense, you guys? And so we had this thing in our head where we're like, there's no way. God, you'd have to do something amazing for us to ever think there's somebody like our spouses. And he comes over us, and me being the guy, I'm like, so, you want to go on a date? and she's like, you know what? I think I do. And so we go on a date. This is where it gets really awkward. I have to call Chris. Because remember, she's my grieving buddy. She's going to be on the podcast. I'm like, Chris, you know this girl that we're going to bring on the podcast? He's like, yeah, it's going to be great. I was like, yeah, well, I think I messed it up. I took her on a date. And he was like, what? He's like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I'll never forget their interview was kind of awkward and weird because, he was awkward. He didn't know if he was allowed to ask or say anything. And so, anyways, that's how this whole thing started. So if you ever listen to the podcast where I'm interviewing her, we'd actually been on a date and we were pretending that we didn't know each other. And we're pretending this is the first time where it's really weird. But it's good stuff. So God literally just says, I've got a different story for you, right? I've got a different story for you. We began to date, and at this point, God had done an amazing work, because this guy that I had never talked to before, Michael's husband, ex-husband, obviously did not like me. And Michael's gone. He's raising the kids. He travels a lot. And I just started showing up. I started showing up to ball games. I started showing up to school events. I just started showing up wherever I could. I started calling and saying, hey, can I have the kids for an evening? Can we go to dinner? And he would sheepishly every once in a while give in, and we would do this. And little by little by little, God began to work in his heart. And the two of us, believe it or not, became friends. And I'm now helping raise these 5 kids. They're not mine. They're his. But he realizes that the connection that we had because of my marriage to Michael, and he told me one time, he said, man, God's been all over me. He said, I really believe that God wants you as part of their life. I believe that you're a spiritual mentor to my kids. And I was like, whoa. Like, imagine that, hearing that. And so for a couple of years, I'm just helping him. You know, they're going home, but I'm helping as much as I can. I meet Crystal. Crystal now knows that they're part of my life. They're not my children, but they're part of my life, and she loves these kids. They love her. We don't know what all that's going to look like, but we know that we want to still continue to be part of their lives however we can. We set a date. We set a date to get married. We were supposed to be married in the summer. I think it was June 14th. We're going to get married in my backyard, and the kids were going to be in it. Ron was going to let the kids actually be in the wedding, and we were going to get married in the backyard. April 19th, the day before Brandon's death anniversary, Ron dies of a heart attack. I get a phone call, and the kid's dad dies of a heart attack just 6 months ago. We rush to the house as fast as we can. 5 kids. Mom's gone. Mom's dead. Mom's gone. Dad's gone. And I remember like, guys, what do you want? They're like, well, your home's our home. I was like, I'm just checking. I find myself at a lawyer on Monday. I'm back at the courthouse on Tuesday. I'm back to the lawyer on Wednesday, back to the courthouse on Thursday. I think it was Friday I get temporary custody of the kids. There was almost a week where there was nobody in charge. Just kind of put all that together. That was hard stuff. I get temporary custody of the kids, and I'm like, God, you got to help us work this out. Crystal and I are begging God and praying, Lord, what's your will? What are we supposed to do? 30 days later, a judge grants me full custody of these 5 kids. In 30 days. I can't tell you how many people were praying. Now we have, it's not a bad situation, it's just a situation. Crystal lives in Columbus, a couple kids. I'm in Circleville, 5 kids, and we're like, how's this going to work? We're supposed to be married in just a few short weeks. And so God impresses upon us to postpone the wedding, and we're just loving on kids. We've got some healing to do now. We're back to grieving again, right? We're back to holding kids. We're back to going through the process again, and we're going to give it as much time as it takes. And I don't even know where I'm at in my notes. We're struggling. We're like, did God just bring us together for a short time? We're not sure. Was this just for a season? And you're getting to see this in real time, by the way. 8 weeks ago, Crystal and I have a breakthrough. We're like, God, we know you brought us together. We know the date. We know the time. We've seen your handiwork through all of this. But God, what is it going to take for us to get under one roof? What is it going to take for us to be a family? 8 weeks ago, we opened our hands and said, okay, God, it's all yours. Back to when I was 20 years old and I said, it's all yours. I'm 56, got a lot of kids, a lot more possessions and things now. It's a little bit more to let go, but it's the same process. Does that make sense? We're saying, God, it's all yours. I go to her and I say, hey, the only way this is going to work is we got to let go. We got to sell everything. You sell your stuff. I sell my stuff. New church, new school, new everything, wherever God's going to send us. And her response was something like, well, but it's about time you get on the same page. Something like that. She said it first. But for the first time, we're like, it's all yours, God. And after that conversation, I was like, so you want to get married? She's like, yeah. I said, how about October 18th? Can you get married in 4 weeks? I gave her 4 weeks. And she's like, sure. And so in 4 weeks, we plan a wedding, get married, and you're seeing the pictures of it. Guys, that was just 4 weeks ago. There's all 11 kids. I've got 2 married. I've got 2 adult children, their spouses. I got a grandbaby now. And then we've got 7 kids under roof right now. So it's a bunch. 4 weeks ago, we get married. Our houses we're going to finish the school year. We got a senior to get through school. But we're going to sell our homes. We're going to relocate. We're going to get under one roof, and we're going to start over. We're going to put another house in order. Make sense? You're saying, where does the run to the hard come from? You know, when I first started talking to Crystal, and we're just friends at this point, I remember she said something that really it threw me back. She was talking about her relationship with God. She was talking about how God had brought her through the tragedy of divorce, how God had brought her through the tragedy. And she said, I would get up every single morning and talk to my girls and say, we can do hard things, girls. She'd say, God's going to help us. Yeah, this stinks. I don't want to leave the house. I got bills to pay. We got to get to the grocery store. We got to get you to school. You got to do these things. But we can do hard things. And I remember immediately recalling a conversation in the hospital with my wife, Michael. Michael lived this way. Michael had lost a child early on. She'd been through a hard divorce. She had some family trauma that she had dealt with. And so Michael was a person who herself was not afraid to do hard things. And she'd dive into hard things. And that's where she really, really found God in a really miraculous way and realized that God could do a much deeper work in her life when she was willing to face the hard things in life. And that's how she talked to people too. When she would meet a friend for the first time, she would get to know them at the deepest level. I'd have people all the time saying, I met your wife for the first time literally in a grocery store aisle, and I feel like she's my best friend already. That's just who she was. She was just she could connect with people so easily that way. But she'd always say things like that. She'd say, Curtis, do you cry? And I'd be like, what do you mean do I cry? She's like, no, can you feel somebody's pain? I never heard anybody talk to me like that before. I said, what does that mean? Michael, because of the things she'd gone through, had learned to really connect with people. And she pulled the kids and I aside in the hospital, and she said, hey, this stinks. I'm sorry. She said, this is hard. She said, but whatever you do, run into this. Don't run away from it. I know that I'm leaving you, but dive into this hard thing and let God do an amazing work in your life. He will sustain you. He will help you. She said, run into this hard thing and let God do a work like he's done in my life before. And then she said, if you'll do this, you'll be able to go out into somebody else's life. You'll be able to impact them. You'll be able to help them. You'll be able to literally run into their hardship and help them heal right where they're at. I had never heard or experienced something like that. But what I didn't realize was happening was Michael was talking Scripture into us. She was talking Scripture. 2 Corinthians 1:3, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our troubles, so that we can then comfort others, those in any trouble, with the comfort we receive from God. Isaiah 58:10, if you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness and your gloom be as noonday. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire, it says, in scorched places, in hard places, in tragic places. Does that make sense? He'll make your bones strong, and you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose water does not fail. Michael had learned the secret to life. Pour into people. Love people in their hardships and their tragedies.
in the things that they're going through, if you'll do that, it'll pull you out of anything that you're going through. That was a hard lesson to learn, but I'll never forget the lesson my wife taught us there in the hospital when she said, run to the hard and run to the hurt, for it's in the greatest hard God's going to do the greatest work in your life. I couldn't do this, you guys. There's no way I could do this if she hadn't given us this mantra, if she hadn't told us collectively as a family, this is the secret to life. Whew. Powerful stuff. Eight weeks ago, Crystal and I put our house back in order. I didn't realize that I'd been practicing this for years. That sometimes it requires us to put our house back in order. You know, the doctor called Michael and I when we were coming home from another doctor's appointment, and I'll never forget, we were in Canal, Winchester, and he called and said, hey, what are you guys doing right now? I said, we're driving. He said, pull over. I pulled over in a little cul-de-sac, and Dr. Mudrick, her heart doctor, the one who had actually discovered the amyloid in her, he said, he went ahead and told us what the diagnosis was and told us the unbelievable statistics of how difficult this was going to be to survive. And I asked him, I said, Doc, I said, you got to tell us what to do. I said, we're realists. I said, you can pull your doctor hat off. You don't have to be nice. You don't have to give us the niceties. Don't give us the doctor quotes. Does that make sense? And he was younger than us, and I said, Doctor, just tell us like it is. What should I do? And he said, Curtis, you need to go get your house in order. We were on our way home to a house full of kids. And he said, you need to go home right now, get those kids together. He says, you need to get your house in order. And I thought about those words a bunch of times, even this week as I was preparing for this message, and thinking about all the times that God had been preparing me to put my house in order from the time I was a kid, through watching my mother go through hard things and have to put her house back in order, having experienced things in my own life where I had to put my house back in order. But this was different. This was a different kind of put your house in order. Then I thought of you guys, and I was like, okay, God, I don't know who I'm talking to today. I don't know what your circumstances are. I don't know if there's been tragedy, death, abuse, abandonment, divorce, you name it. But I promise you, you've been through some stuff, right? And in each one of those things, there is this period of, I can stay stuck in this thing, or I can say, God, it's all yours. Help me put my house back in order. I had to do it through, not having a dad growing up. I didn't know how that would impact me until I was an adult, but I had to work through that as an adult. I didn't realize this angry little kid who was into all kinds of mischief. I didn't understand why I was like that until I was older, right? Had to understand that, figure that out. I mean, we were poor. We didn't know we were poor until we got older and was like, man, we were poor. And then you kind of work through that. But then I realized how much my mother had sacrificed, how much the church had come alongside of us, how much the church had helped us. I saw more groceries show up on our doorstep as a kid. I would see cars in the driveway. They weren't great cars, but there was always a car in the driveway. Sometimes somebody would sell us a piece of junk car, but it would run for a while. Sometimes somebody would give us a car. I can't tell you how many times a refrigerator would break down and a new one would show up. That was my childhood growing up. God provided over and over and over and over again because of a faithful mom who made a hard decision that she was going to raise her kids in the church and raise her kids to know Jesus. Are you with me? I don't know what your circumstance is, but I promise you we all have a house that we can put in order. And I had two scriptures. Thought they were appropriate. Psalms 127, a song of accents of Solomon. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. I've labored in vain on some dumb stuff before, right? And you look back and you think, man, I spent an awful lot of time on that thing that doesn't amount to anything, that has no purpose, right? Unless the Lord builds the house, we labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. You as a church have a new job. You know what it is to watch over this city. I was thinking of that when you're talking about praying for your community, about impacting your community, doing dinners for your community. What a great effort, guys. You want to make a difference in your community, you're doing it. Those are the kinds of things you need to do. Proverbs 24:3, by wisdom a house is built, by understanding it is established, by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Whew. Whose life do you need to impact? You don't have to do this. You don't have to take on 9 kids. But there's somebody that needs you. I needed somebody as a kid. There was men in the church that stepped up when I was a kid and said, I'm going to help that boy. Yeah, there's somebody. And Shane, I don't know how you want to end this, but I'm going to have you come up and pray for your congregation. And you know the needs of these folks. You know what they're going through.